There's a type of player in every great geopolitical conflict who never appears on the battlefield. They don't send troops. They don't issue ultimatums. They don't post on Truth Social at 2 a.m. They wait. They watch. And while everyone else spends their blood, their treasury, and their credibility, this player quietly collects the winnings from every outcome. While America spent 5 weeks bombing Iran, while Iran spent 5 weeks blocking the world's most critical oil passage, while oil hit $110 a barrel, global supply chains fractured, U.S. alliances strained, and the world held its breath over a 21-mile stretch of water. China was buying Iranian oil at a discount. China was collecting toll payments in yuan at the Strait of Hormuz. China was brokering the ceasefire, not with its name on it, but with its fingerprints all over it. China was rebuilding its image as the responsible adult in a room set on fire by Washington. And China was doing all of this while planning the reconstruction contracts for post-war Iran before the ink on the ceasefire was even dry. The US-Iran war didn't have one winner. It had three: the ceasefire, the pause, and Beijing. And Beijing's win is the one that compounds over the next decade. This is how China pulled off the most audacious quiet play in modern geopolitics, and why almost nobody is talking about it. Start with the simplest fact. While the world's oil markets were in crisis, while tankers sat anchored outside the Strait of Hormuz afraid to move, while European and Asian refiners were paying nearly $150 a barrel for certain crude grades, Iran's oil kept flowing, and almost all of it went to one place. China buys more than 80% of Iran's oil exports, enjoying discounted rates in purchases widely believed to be facilitated in yuan. The war did little to disrupt oil flows between the two countries, which remained similar to pre-conflict levels. In the first 2 weeks of the conflict, Iran exported 12 to 13.7 million barrels of crude, most of it to China. Think about what that means. Everyone else on Earth was scrambling for supply, prices were spiking, and China, which had quietly stockpiled aggressively in the months before the conflict began, raising crude oil imports by over 15% in early 2026, was sitting on reserves while buying Iranian oil cheaper than anyone else on the planet. The 25-year China-Iran Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement, reaffirmed in late 2025, includes potential Chinese investments of up to $400 billion in Iran's oil, gas, and infrastructure sectors in exchange for energy supplies at reduced prices. $400 billion. In a country the United States has been trying to economically isolate for decades. While America was bombing Iran, China was deepening a $500 billion investment partnership with it. This is not improvised. This was built over years, and the war simply accelerated it. Now here is where it gets genuinely historic. For 50 years, there has been an arrangement so foundational to American power that most people have never needed to think about it. In 1974, the United States cut a deal with Saudi Arabia. Sell your oil exclusively in US dollars, and America will provide military protection. The whole Gulf followed, and because the entire world needed oil, the entire world needed dollars, financially dependent on the United States. That system is called the petrodollar. Now watch what happened at the Strait of Hormuz. Under Iran's de facto toll booth regime, commercial vessels were being charged transit fees in yuan, the latest example of deepening Chinese-Iranian economic cooperation. China's Ministry of Commerce acknowledged in a social media post that yuan was being used to settle payments. An Iranian government official told CNN that tankers could have permission to travel through the strait if they agreed to sell oil in China's currency, not US dollars. Deutsche Bank economists warned that the conflict could be remembered as a key catalyst for erosion in petrodollar dominance and the beginnings of the Petroyuan. In the middle of a US military campaign, at the choke point that controls 20% of the world's oil, the dollar was being bypassed. Hormuz is becoming a laboratory for a broader experiment. Can control over a physical choke point be converted into leverage over the currency of trade itself? The answer, for the first time in modern history, appears to be yes. Now let's talk about the diplomatic masterstroke. When the ceasefire was finally announced on April 8th, the world watched Pakistan's Prime Minister take the credit. Trump thanked Pakistan's Prime Minister. Vance was dispatched to Islamabad. The framework was Pakistani, the venue was Pakistani, but the architecture behind it was Chinese. According to the New York Times, China played a key role in convincing Iran to accept Pakistan's two-week ceasefire proposal on April 7th. Pakistan provided the practical channel. China provided the political weight and strategic backing. Having Pakistan as the visible face of the mediation paid off. It signaled simultaneous proximity to both sides without the diplomatic exposure of direct involvement. This is Chinese diplomacy at its most refined. Don't take credit, don't take blame, let Pakistan hold the pen, but make sure you held the hand that held the pen. China put forward a 5-point proposal alongside Pakistan, rallied support from Gulf countries, and opposed a UN proposal to use military force to open the strait. One analyst put it plainly, the war with Iran is the priority of all countries in and outside the region. It is an opportunity China will not miss. Meanwhile, Washington publicly said it had little interest in boosting China's stature, and China let them, because the result was the same either way. Everyone in the global south noticed who was pushing for peace. There is one more layer of China's involvement that received almost no coverage in Western media. The signing of the 25-year China-Iran partnership established a framework for enduring collaboration in energy, infrastructure, security, and defense technologies. In practice, that meant something very specific during this war. Intelligence assessments indicated Beijing prepared to offer financial aid and missile components. Chinese radar systems and navigation technology, exported pre-war, enhanced Iran's electronic warfare capabilities. In January 2026, China began implementing a strategy to replace Western technologies in Iran with secure, closed Chinese systems. China didn't fire a shot. By providing satellite data, navigation infrastructure, and electronic warfare expertise, China changed the strategic balance without sending its own troops. The United States fought the most technologically advanced military campaign in the region's history, and in the background, China was quietly ensuring that Iran's targeting systems were sharper, its communications harder to intercept, and its defenses better equipped than before. All without a single Chinese soldier crossing a border. Beyond oil, beyond currency, beyond missiles. There is a softer, slower, more powerful game being played. It is the battle for how the world perceives the two great powers. America entered this war with stated goals: destroy Iran's nuclear program, achieve regime change, rebuild the Middle East order. 5 weeks later, those goals are very much open questions. Some analysts say the war has led to an even more hardline government in Tehran, more determined to pursue nuclear weapons. America's alliances are strained. The ceasefire is less a resolution than a pause. Into that space, the space left by American credibility, China stepped with a very deliberate narrative. China's message was simple. While Washington is reckless and aggressive, China is a principled and responsible champion of peace. Every country in the global south is watching this. Every nation that relies on Middle Eastern energy watched which major power tried to end the crisis and which one threatened to destroy civilizations on a social media platform. That perception is not easily undone. Now, to be fair, China's win is not total. Observers in China itself have reacted cautiously, citing operational limits, security risks, and the concern that a visible Chinese role could strain US-China ties. Beijing's ability to influence Iran is limited. De-dollarization on a meaningful scale would require the participation of Gulf states, all of which have priced their oil in dollars since the 1970s. And China genuinely doesn't want a long war because its export-heavy economy is vulnerable to energy shocks. So this is not the story of China secretly orchestrating everything. China is opportunistic, not omniscient. But here is what matters. Every move China made advanced its long-term interests. Cheap oil, more yuan in global circulation, a diplomatic reputation as the world's responsible peacemaker, reconstruction contracts waiting when the dust settles, and a 25-year strategic partnership with the country that controls the world's most important waterway. None of that goes away. There is an ancient Chinese strategic concept, winning without fighting. The idea that the highest form of strategy is not defeating your enemy on the battlefield, but positioning yourself so that the enemy's every move, whether victory or defeat, makes you stronger. That is exactly what China did. America fought. Iran resisted. The world paid higher prices for gas. Credibility was spent. And when it was over, When the cameras found Trump and Hegseth declaring victory, China was already looking at the next move. Yuan-settled oil contracts, reconstruction investment, the slow erosion of the petrodollar, a diplomatic brand as the peace-seeking superpower in an age of American unpredictability. Here's the question I want to leave you with. America still has the world's reserve currency, the most powerful military, and the deepest financial markets. China's economy is fragile, its currency is controlled, and its global reach is still limited. So, is China's win in this conflict real and lasting, or is it the illusion of advantage that dissolves once the next crisis hits? Drop your answer below. If you've made it to the end, subscribe, because we are going to keep tracking how this ceasefire unfolds, whether the Petroyuan story develops into something real, and what the Islamabad negotiations actually produce. The Middle East just changed. The question is, by how much?